Greetings and salutations, viewers and listeners. Welcome to another episode of Game Break. I am Charles, coming to today with another episode of World and Economica. Now, we're still on our ways to figuring out this whole financial contest thing, and how to get on Hagana's good side, and how to help out with the debt the church has, and basically how not to be a douche anymore, because Hal is a bit of a douche. But it looks like he's slowly on his road to redemption, or at least that is the hopes. So let's dive right back into where we were last episode, and hiding from Hagana. Or really, it was, we hid from Hagana and now we're on our way back. So, I meekly took a detour and headed back to the church. Lisa wasn't in the living room, so I guessed she was in her room. I made some coffee, headed back to my room, and turned on the computer. In order to solve one problem, I made a single move. Thus, my next move for the next problem was to take a look at the stocks. However, the quiet of the church apparently was merely the calm before the storm, as they said back on Earth. Several hours later, from far away, I could hear the muffled sound of a telephone. It doesn't sound too muffled to me, but... Immediately afterwards, from the second floor, I could hear Lisa's hurried footsteps heading downstairs. It had been 3 hours since Lisa rushed out of the church. The day had already turned dark, and after having eaten only one steamed bun for lunch, I was definitely hungry now. The church had fallen silent, an indication that Lisa and Hagana had not returned yet. Lisa had undoubtedly left in a hurry because of Hagana. Did she perhaps get scolded by the police? But I felt that there wasn't a reason to rush like that if that were simply the case. Besides, it was Lisa's hobby to shelter people like her, so I figured she would have been calmer about it. So if that were the case, then all I could think of were situations like Hagana's parents finding her, or her being about to get caught and needing help. And thus, I was oddly worried, pacing back and forth in the living room, sneaking peeks through the curtains. The timing of the phone ringing in the quiet living room made me jump in surprise, pathetically. I would have been more hesitant if Lisa's terminal had rung, but the ringing came from the phone on the wall, so I picked up after the 5th ring. Hello?
Hal?
I was relieved to hear Lisa's voice, but at the same time, I realized she hadn't contacted me for several hours after leaving without a word, making annoyance well up in me. But before I could complain about it, Lisa continued talking.
I'll be home soon, so could you start the bath for me?
Huh?
Make sure it's hot. Also, in the cupboard I've set aside some cocoa, so go ahead and make some. Make it as sweet as you can.
Cocoa? Bath? Better yet, where are... Before I could finish, Lisa hung up. I looked at the telephone receiver I had just been talking into and furiously put it back in place. Why did I have to take orders involving baths and cocoa without even an explanation? While fuming, I thought I would ignore her request, but in the end, I reconsidered and started the water for the bath. After that, I followed Lisa's instructions. I rummaged through the cupboard to find a package that contained what appeared to be a high-grade cocoa, and prepared it according to the recipe on the back. While milk was boiling in the saucepan, the delightful fragrance was enough to make me want some too. And when I went to fetch an extra cup, I heard the sound of a door opening and closing from within the church. Muttering about her finally being back and sighing wearily, though I hadn't really done much of anything, I turned off the stove since the milk had started boiling. Well, the hot cocoa is almost done. Yeah, just as I took the saucepan in my hand and poured the milk into a cup, Hagana walked through the living room with great strides and dove into her room. That wasn't really an exaggeration, as the slamming of her door with all her might seemed to shake the church itself. "Kay?" Lisa froze in her tracks in the middle of the living room, looking like she was about to call out to Hagana to stop her. The always calm, sometimes dim-witted, but dependable older woman was nowhere to be seen. She was so tired she didn't even notice me looking at her, as her outstretched hand towards Hagana eventually faltered. And when she realized that I was looking at her, she let out a small laugh. Thinking that I might have something that I shouldn't have, I went back to pouring milk into the cup.
"Did you prepare it right?"
Lisa turned toward my back and said those words. Shouldn't you be talking about something else right now? That was what I thought to myself, but I couldn't outright criticize her. Probably.
"I see."
I'm sure if I turned around, I would see Lisa with a strained smile on her face. I didn't want to see Lisa like that, so I focused on pouring milk instead.
"Oh, are you making two?"
I almost spilled the milk when I heard that. Yeah, I suppose so.
"Could you hand me one cup?"
At those words, I finally turned around, and I was startled. At first, it was dark, so I didn't notice it, but it was clear that the lower part of her right eye was swollen. What happened? At my words, Lisa inspected her tops and pants. The feeling of irritation as I looked at her overrode the feeling of how silly her actions were. Your face.
"Ah."
As soon as Lisa realized it, she looked up and, with her right hand, touched her face with her slender fingers. Seeing how painful that looked made my face flinch in reaction.
"It was nothing. I just ran into something."
Like a fist? It was nothing. I don't know about how it works on Earth, but on the moon that doesn't look like it was nothing. Even I knew about Newton's third law of motion. Lower gravity meant less weight, and less weight meant less impact. I knew from experience because I had traded many a blow. Lisa looked embarrassed and had a strained smile on her face as I saw through her ruse. She then looked towards me.
Would you mind giving me some cocoa?
Normally, I'd be angry at her for dodging the question. However, I couldn't say any more with Lisa in front of me. At the very least, my face showed my displeasure as I stirred the cup I had poured milk into and placed it on the table.
Thank you.
Lisa smiled as she thanked me and took a seat at the table. After that, acting as if she had just returned from a trip into a freezer, she held the cup in her hands, blew on it several times, and then sipped lightly from it. It was at that point that I realized I had forgotten to put sugar in, but it seemed that Lisa didn't mind it at all. Or rather, it felt like she wasn't really sensing the taste at all. Her attention wasn't on what was in front of her, but somewhere else. I deliberately slammed the sugar jar on the table with a thud. Sugar.
Thank you.
After saying that, she dropped a single sugar cube into her cup listlessly. And then, as if being satisfied with that single action, she didn't pick the cup back up. Well, I couldn't take it any longer and asked the question. Lisa's reaction was slow, and I thought she was just ignoring me at first. But she slowly looked up at me. What happened? As something of a freeloader, it's not like I had any direct connection to Hagana or Lisa. But I felt that I had a right to ask.
Do I have to talk about it?
And then, like a child, Lisa responded to me, smiling slightly. Rather than getting angry, I was getting scared. Even then, I gathered up some strength within me and spoke. Well, I did make you this hot cocoa. I had a sour expression on my face when I spoke, and Lisa looked at the cup of cocoa in her hands before looking at me once more. I could see that her face looked somewhat relieved as she was blowing on the cocoa.
That's true. You did make cocoa for me.
I also prepared the bath.
Well, I suppose at this point I can't just say nothing then.
Lisa drank her cocoa and sighed. The silence was long, and I felt that if it were to drag on any longer, it'd be stifling enough to knock me over.
Yesterday, Toyama came over, remember?
Toyama, yeah?
This was a continuation of that talk.
Wait, what? Oh, no. No, if that's Toyama, oh, shit's gonna go down. No. You have to explain more than that. After saying that, Lisa drank the cocoa once more. They weren't words of explanation, but even without my urging, I had faith that Lisa would explain everything.
Yesterday's talk was, well, I suppose you could say, simply a demand with regards to the loan.
Huh? I raised my voice unintentionally in response. But I just paid the interest.
Yes, Toyama was grateful for that. That was why he was so polite, you know.
Now that she mentioned it, it was true that Toyama wasn't really being coercive. He was actually being humble and apologetic. On top of that, he even offered up a prayer to the statue of the crucified man at the altar. Perhaps he was well aware that he'd come with an unreasonable request.
The loan, you see. He asked for it to be paid back in full.
In full? My words stopped there as I did some number crunching in my head with regards to the financial situation of the church. The loan was at 50,000 mools, with a monthly interest payment of 200 mools. However, I didn't even get back the 200 mools I had put up. Given that, there was no possibility of paying back the loan in full. Why do you have to? Is it written in the contract?
No, the loan is indefinite. Toyama always does it like that. I can only loan money out to people I trust, so pay it back whenever you can, he would say.
It sounded like a nice deal, but interest was still being collected. Hence, the situation was the same.
However, Toyama did have a financial backer.
Financial backer?
This person gave him the original funds that let him loan out money to people.
Oh no. Oh, so Toyama's getting squeezed. Ah. And?
That financial backer appears to have passed away in the hospital.
So that was the reason why Lisa needed to repay the entire amount. But on the other hand, with his financial backer dead, wouldn't that be a good thing for Toyama?
The person who gave Toyama money was apparently someone he knew back on Earth and had very uncertain conditions for borrowing, he said. And then when he died, a relative of his from Earth arrived and sold the loan document Toyama had to someone else.
Oh no. Ah, I see. Wasn't hard to understand that.
Yes, I can't blame those people either, but it put Toyama in a difficult situation. Up until now, it was a sloppily written contract. But because he had known that man for such a long time, they had mockingly added some extra stipulations to the contract.
Oh no.
Toyama actually never managed to make a profit.
Ah, I totally had a hunch. An unsecured loan at 6% interest isn't feasible.
Speaking of which, Hal, you did mention that before, didn't you? And because of that, they approached Toyama to pay all that money back. And that total amount is well over 800,000 mools, I think. I can see how Toyama might be a little stressed at the moment.
8. That amount of money was enough to build a nice small house in the White Belt. If you were on Earth, whether it be dollars, yen, or marks, it was a princely sum of money no matter how you looked at it.
Naturally, there's no way Toyama could have all that much money. If there was someone in need who was also someone he thought he could trust, he would loan a lot out to them even when his own family's funds were running low. Thus, all Toyama had in his possession were loan contracts.
Oh no.
So, the people who pursued Toyama to return the money said that if he wasn't able to pay back the money, then they would buy back the contracts at a discount.
This is getting ugly. Really? If that's really how it is, it That's not too bad. Depending on who owns the contract now, though, and what the stipulations are, this is gonna get ugly. I thought that for a brief moment, but when Lisa looked at me, I realized that there was more to this. So in other words, the lender changes from Toyama to these other guys then.
Yes, for us the loan is indefinite, but at a precaution the contract is reviewed every 3 years. Toyama said that if there are any issues found during that time, things will be bad.
Bad?
In other words, you'll have to sell everything off in order to pay it off. I don't really understand, but it sounds like the court can force a disposition. In that case, no matter what assets you have, they'd have to be sold in a fire sale. So even a loan of 50,000 mools could be difficult.
So that is why he asked you to pay it all back now.
Exactly. He said instead of hurrying to sell at a loss, take the time to find someone who would be willing to buy the property at a high price. Toyama honestly meant well when he came by.
If everything Toyama said could be believed, that is. I wasn't going to say it out loud, though. I honestly didn't think that Toyama was a sneaky kind of guy. Of course, there were adults who possessed the down and dirty skills of deception, but if that were the case, I felt that Toyama would have presented himself in a much better light.
But...
And as Lisa punctuated the conversation, my mind stopped wandering.
Hagana, that child is rather sharp, and yesterday it seemed that she caught wind that something was going on. And then it seemed as if she caught wind of this talk as well.
In a fit of rage, did she confront Toyama then? I asked nervously as Lisa looked like she was slipping deeper into depression. She nodded. At that moment, the image of Agana, as she came to look for Chris above the tunnel, crossed my mind. I went to Chris because I figured she'd know about Hagana, and Hagana probably went to Chris because she figured Chris would know about the neighborhood. Since Toyama lent money in this neighborhood, certainly she would have seen his tired appearance before.
It was dreadful. Honestly, it caused Toyama a lot of distress. Even in normal circumstances for a moneylender, even if they don't actually do anything bad, it's too easy to suspect that they are capable of doing something bad anyway. Without knowing the facts, Toyama looks like a bad guy, doesn't he? Even then, he's someone who's known in this area and has been able to continue his work without any major problems. But...
And that injury...
Oh, this...
Lisa laughed weakly, and her gaze turned from the living room to farther down the corridor. And then, in a rather low voice, she spoke.
Thanks to this, I was able to calm Hagana down from her anger.
In other words, at that moment, Hagana had either thrown or hit something, probably.
I know that she did that all for me, but...
That was always the end result. That time with me in the clothing store was the same thing.
She always seems to blame herself for what happens. And if there is anything that she can do, no matter where it is, she will try to do something, I imagine.
A difficult personality. Lisa did not disagree with my mumbling.
She's a serious girl. Stubbornly serious. Why can't she get rewarded for her toils, I wonder? Honestly, What was the Lord thinking?
Lisa seemed to laugh in sorrow, then looked downcast before falling silent. But I couldn't stand the silence and spoke up quickly. Well, what are you going to do?
Eh?
The loan. Return what was given. That was expected. But if everything in the world went that well, I'd be living in a penthouse in Newton City by now.
Yes. What should we do?
As Lisa said that, she looked troubled as she smiled. If she really had no way to repay that money, then I might just blow my lid. I would probably think that she should do whatever she could and work. But Lisa actually had a means to pay it back. If she sold off things like those books, odds are she would be able to pay back the loan. But even then, Lisa thought about that before and was at a loss. Lisa cared for those books as if they were a part of her, and if she were to sell those books, she'd never see them again. Studying ancient Earth religions at a top-notch university on the moon, setting up a church, a relic from centuries past, sheltering runaways and those that have nowhere else to go, reading hundreds-year-old books from Earth about God on rainy days. Those were things that she enjoyed doing. For someone so unsuited for the moon, Lisa was very mature. Besides, if I were to make a list of people I could rely on, I'm sure Lisa's name would be propelled to the top. Even so, that same Lisa gave a troubled smile. There was no doubt Hagana ran over to Toyama's place and lashed out insults at him. If not that, then perhaps she pressed the point of selling herself off. As it was Hagana we were talking about, either possibility was believable. Lisa wrapped her hands around the cup of cocoa I poured for her, tilted it slowly, and sipped on it.
Cocoa always tastes good.
Somehow, those empty words were gut-wrenching to me.
Did you prepare the bath as well?
Just as you asked me to.
Thank you. I guess this is the part where I'm supposed to tell you and Hagana over the phone to remember to eat and get along with each other. Heh.
It wasn't a joke worth laughing at, so I just let out a snort of discontent. Didn't seem as if Lisa wanted to laugh either, and she put down the cup and stood up.
Thank you very much.
There's another cup left. Lisa paused for a moment and laughed slightly as she shrugged her shoulders.
I don't want to get fat. Oh, I hope you won't mind if I use the bath first.
No, that's fine by me.
I'll be angry if you peep.
Of course I won't. I reacted reflexively, and only then did Lisa laugh happily. Leaving behind that smile, she went towards the bathroom. It seemed that her manner of walking had a listless, forlorn manner to it. With a thud, the door closed, and I stared at it for no real reason. When I heard the door to the bath open and close, I averted my eyes from the door, as if a surveillance camera was looking right at me. My eyes had then turned toward the single cup left in the sink. It had already started to cool down as a thin layer was floating on top of the milk. What was Lisa going to do after this? What was going to be done was already decided. Without a doubt, she was going to sell those books. The answer was decided from the beginning. All that was left was a question of when she'd commit to it. Since it was someone else's affair, I could say it like that. I was aware of this. That is why it was no surprise that Lisa was in the bathroom, crying. I've heard from the ruffians in my hometown that the seaside, or even a bathroom, was a suitable place for an adult to cry. Was there a good resolution to all of this? Probably not, I suppose. If there was, then it would have definitely been carried out already. Otherwise, there would be no reason to suffer a slow death, paying interest every month. Paying off the principal would eventually pay off the loan. But if one simply paid the interest, then the loan would never go away. Any grade schooler knew that. However, Lisa had trouble paying the interest, and I had to step in the end. Thus, she had no choice but to rely on the final option. Lisa had to sell a part of her. It was better than Hagana selling off her entire body. That was probably how she convinced Hagana, I'd imagine. Much like Earth, the moon was also a place where only the strongest survived. On the moon, they were able to take a place that didn't have any signs of life and forcibly build a city on the surface. So there really wasn't any allowance for doing anything half-hearted. Space was cold and dark. I wonder if Hagana was crying. Perhaps she was. She was probably blaming herself. If I were in their shoes, it would definitely be quite painful. Lisa was a good person, and that made it all the more painful. Toyama has said that Hagana didn't care about Lisa just because she'd given her shelter. I had a feeling about that as well. If it was concerning anyone else in Lunar City, that was as loony as Lisa, I wouldn't care as much. 50,000 mools. I mouthed that amount of money once more. 50,000 mools. While staring at the cooling cocoa in the sink, I wanted to curse God if he existed. 50,000 mools. How much money did I have? Before Lisa came out of the bath, I went back to my own room and turned on the laptop. On the screen, the trading window was open. Cash balance, 72,610 mools. For someone working in a top company in this lunar city, it might have been peanuts. But for everyone else, it was a fair sum of money. I had built this up from the 2,000 mools I had on hand originally. Every day until night, concentrating without eating or drinking, literally building it up with dogged determination. Taking out 50,000 mools would leave me with 22,000. Those numbers made me want to throw up. When I don't even want to spend a few dozen mools, was there any need for me to give 50,000 mools for someone else's sake? Just what did Lisa mean to me? Of course, I owed her for saving me from the police. But that was it. Even though I'm living here, I'm properly paying for that right. So even though Lisa really was in trouble, there was absolutely no reason why I had to part with my own money. On top of that, Lisa had a way of paying back the debt. Sell the old books in her room. That would be all it took. Despite all this, I couldn't shake the mental image of Lisa being that exhausted. For the first time, I learned that watching someone have to part with something truly dear to them could be physically painful for the watcher themselves. And that was why I stared at the laptop screen, unable to move. In my hands was a way to rescue Lisa from her plight. Furthermore, I even had a reason to give it to her. She had said that after selling those books, she would never be able to get her hands on them again. But in my case, that wasn't true. If my investment methods were truly great, if they'd bring me results befitting my dreams, then giving away 50,000 mools wouldn't be one bit of a problem. Just grow the remaining amount like crazy. A few years later, 50,000 mools would be merely something to sneeze at. With the 2,000 mools I had, I grew it 35 times to 70,000 mools in 3 months. That's pretty frickin' impressive, I wanna say. If I had faith in the correctness of my ways, then I shouldn't be feeling this hesitation at handing over 50,000 mools. That means that the thing making me hesitate was either wretched stinginess or a lack of faith in my investment methods. I was supposed to have decided that if I couldn't fulfill my dreams, there'd be no point in me living. And yet, even though I was on the verge of declaring that I could not fulfill my dreams, I was losing my nerve. If I couldn't just casually pop off the 50,000 mools, then it'd all be a lie. I'd be a liar. In front of the laptop, I tightened my hands into fists. I ground my teeth at just how pathetic I was. It was enough to make me want to cry. Are you really that small of a person? Some punk who only knows how to pick up pennies. I berated myself with those insults. I looked up and looked listlessly around the room. So much that you'd think the right answer was hidden somewhere in there. No, I knew what the right answer was, and I just didn't have the guts to take the plunge. And then, when my line of sight fell on the divider between this room and the next, I recalled Hagana. Hagana had the courage to take the plunge. She had the courage to say, "Buy me." Moreover, saying it not like some sheltered, self-centered brat, but as someone who had really been sold from Earth. As someone who knew exactly what it meant to be sold. She had the courage to step into that hell once more. But Lisa would never accept that. Hagana probably really felt that if only Lisa could be saved, then whatever happened to Hagana herself was acceptable. I thought, compared to Hagana's troubles, my dilemma was a luxury. I recalled the exchange we had in the living room when I had thought to make peace with her.
We are doing all that we can to survive.
Hagana's words struck me once more in the chest. Was I doing all that I could to survive? Was I doing things to the limit of my abilities? That was the moment. That was when I remembered the investment contest. Prize money. Dashing to the Economic Research Center's homepage, I logged in and looked at the summary. For the top-ranking people, there were prizes. First got 200,000 mools. Second got 50,000, and third got 30,000, while fourth and fifth each had 20,000. Getting second would be wonderful, and even third would be a great help. But what moved my heart was the existence of the investment contest itself. Even if I lost at the contest, it wouldn't affect my wealth. The contest was like a free lottery. On top of that, there was an important thing. A very important thing. I once again looked up and turned around. A wall was there, dividing this room from the next. Past that, Hagana was surely crying. She must be there, blaming herself and crying over how she couldn't do anything for her beloved Lisa. Hagana, who clumsily bumbled her way through haggling as a way of thanking me. And when I told her how her haggling stunk, she was so angry she practically kicked my leg off and cried. Some of that must have been her base personality. But now that I thought about it, she might not have had any room to breathe. For example, even if she could teach kids math, she wasn't helping them advance to better schools in any real sense if she was unable to change the economic circumstances surrounding them. Hagana had probably been thrown around by conditions like that, brought to the moon, then wound up at Lisa's place after running away. Apparently, math could solve problems elegantly. However, Hagana came here without solving a single real-world problem. In Toyama's way of saying things, like a chick that hadn't even broken its shell. With respect to Hagana, the investment contest was a big opportunity. Hagana would be of help to Lisa, and I would be able to clear Hagana's misunderstanding. Plus, if it all went well, then we'd all be happy. And we are going to leave it there. It took him long enough to figure out this is what you should do. Team up with Hagana to try and win the contest, or at least get pretty far up. It solves everyone's problems, but good lord, I didn't realize that the problems were going to be that complicated or severe. 50,000 mools is not really chump change for them. So this is going to be interesting. But we're going to have to wait until next time to find out just how that conversation goes down. Until then, thank you all for joining me. Hit that subscribe button, click that thumbs up, post in the comments what you think of this game so far. Do you think that he will be able to convince Hagana to help him? Will they be able to win this contest? Will there be a happy ending? We'll find out. But until next time, thank you all for joining me. And see you all next time.